Thank you. Good evening. I'm going to call the Board of Selectmen's meeting for January 17th, 2023 to order. Would you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
Allegiance to the States of America, the United States Republic, which is one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Tell Mike to silence himself.
Public comment announcement.
Michael, I do then have one.
Go ahead.
The Treasure Chest Committee decided their last meeting to delay opening from 9 until 10, so the opening hours will be 10 until 3. You know, they've had some discussion on whether they should close in winter, but it turns out there's no one there that early. It's too cold, and they have a hard time getting volunteers as well.
Okay, thank you. Don?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. That's what I wanted to verify, because people keep asking me. They're still open.
They're still
but
open.
With different hours.
Opening hour, they were opening at 9, they're moving now to open until 10. They're opening at 10.
Okay, terrific, because a lot of people thought they were like,
They did put it on Facebook, they put it on the website, so they're trying to get the word around.
thanks.
Thank you. Emily?
Good evening, Emily Mitchell, Town Clerk. 2 updates from the Town Clerk's office. Today is 5 months to the day from our May 2023 annual town election, 119 days if you prefer. So I just wanted to give folks a couple of important dates in the lead up to the town election. So we are making nomination papers available tomorrow, which is January 18th. We have 4 offices that will appear on the ballot in May. They are Board of Selectmen, a 3-year term, and we have 2 vacancies. Brooks Free Library Board of Trustees, also a 3-year term with 2 vacancies. Monomoy Regional School Committee, a 3-year term with 2 vacancies. And Water Wastewater Commission, also a 3-year term with 2 vacancies. So nomination papers are available beginning tomorrow. The last day to obtain nomination papers is Friday, March 24th. And the last day to submit nomination papers for certification is March 28th. For voters who have no intention of running for office but are just looking forward to participating in the election, the last day to register to vote is April 21st. So I don't know if anyone has questions on the election, or I'll jump into my other announcement.
Questions from the board?
Excellent. The other thing, January is dog licensing season. So for all residents who have a dog 6 months or older, we ask that you stop into our office sometime before the end of January to get your dog licensed. We do need updated rabies vaccination paperwork for all dogs. And if it's your first time since your dog has been neutered or spayed, we ask that you bring documentation to that effect. The fee is $10 for neutered or spayed dogs and $20 for intact dogs. So again, if folks have any questions, certainly give us a call or stop by, or we're ready anytime business hours to get those processed for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment announcement? Mary?
Just going to go through our committee lists. We have several, although kudos to Larry and Julie. We are below 30 openings at the moment. We're down to 26, I believe. But we need agricultural, capital outlay, community center facilities, conservation, forest, culture, energy and climate action, historic, planning, real estate and open space, treasure chest, voter information, as Michael said last time, very important. We have 3 openings, so we don't have a quorum for them to function. And they do fabulous work going up to the election and the town meeting. Youth Services and the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Thank you, Mary. Anyone else? I just have one, and just to offer our condolences to the passing of Dan O'Leary. Dan was a longtime teacher of a lot of ours, and a staple in the community. And judging by the services being held tonight, he was liked by an awful lot of people, lying around the parking lot. So, jumping into public hearings. Mary? We'll read the public hearing notice, or don't, sorry.
Just
So,
gonna
I don't know why it's Mary had to have it.
They can't tell us apart, Don.
Thank The Harwich Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing under Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 138, on Tuesday, January 17th, 2023, no earlier than 6 p.m. in the Don B. Griffin Room located in the Harwich Town Hall, 732 Main Street, Harwich, for the purpose of hearing a progress update from Chase Escape Cape Cod, DBA The Summer House Cafe, 126 Route 28, Harwich, regarding the non-use of their current seasonal all-alcohol liquor license. All members of the public having an interest in this topic are cordially invited to attend. Remote participation is also offered. Please see the posted agenda for dial-in information. It's signed by the Harwich Board of Selectmen as the local licensing authority, and it was printed in the Cape Cod Chronicle on December 29th, 2022.
Thank you, Don. Public hearing is open. Is anyone here for the applicant? Go ahead, Joe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will read into the record an email that was received by me and sent to the chair and Attorney Blake. And I apologize, I'm going to probably butcher the last name. But Attorney Neal, last name is spelled Kreuzer, so I believe that's Cruiser. Attorney Cruiser sent the following email. Mr. Chairman, I'll read it for the record if you'd like.
Go ahead.
Mr. Powers, this is Attorney Neal Cruiser. I'm handling all matters in reference to Chase Escape LLC, doing business as the Summer House Cafe. I am on paternity leave until the third week in February, and Nicholas Fiorello has contacted a variant of SARS and will not be able to attend this evening's hearing. We are requesting the status hearing be rescheduled to February 21st, 2023. We respectfully request this hearing be put over until then, based on the totality of the circumstances of our newborn and the health issues of Mr. Fiorello. I am available between February 21st and then again on the last week of February. Such a request for a continuance is timely and should give the Summer House some time to review the septic designs and other items the Town Select Board and BOH, which I understand to be Board of Health, had suggested that they get done. Further, Mr. Chairman, I sent a reply to Attorney Cruiser at 5:22, if you'd like me to read that response as well. Attorney Cruiser, given that the matters which are referenced below have been publicly noticed and known of for several weeks and set to begin shortly, your request is untimely, and therefore the hearings and meetings will proceed as noticed. Both meetings are also fully accessible via GoToMeeting, so you or your client should make every effort to avail yourselves of that manner by which to participate. Sincerely, me. So we have Attorney Blake on the line. Attorney Blake has confirmed that it is proper if it is deemed to be untimely, but the point is you've now reached this hearing, you have that information. It would be a determination by the board, but my recommendation would be that you proceed in the manner in which Attorney Blake recommends you proceed.
Thank you. Attorney Blake?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. My name is Jeff Blake, as you know. I think it's important to note also that this is the second time that we've received a request to continue, not even on the eve of a hearing, but mere hours before the hearing. As you also know, you have given this applicant many opportunities to come before you and to determine and to provide you with evidence as to why they have not opened. In my opinion, due to the late hour of the request, and especially since counsel, while claiming he may be on leave, this has been a hearing that has been scheduled for months, and presumably counsel knew about his leave for probably the same amount of time. In my opinion, you've done everything you have to do. You do not have to continue this hearing. That is certainly up to you, but I believe that at some point enough is enough. And that's up to you. I think it would be reasonable for you to move forward with this hearing.
Thank you, Attorney Blake. Larry?
Yeah, I agree. I see no reason to delay. If you read the documentation we have in our packet, we've been holding this over months. We have the health department's been holding it over for years, I think.
So I think
Conservation
what we'll
is
do, Larry,
involved.
just, you're okay with going forward with the hearing, and then we'll get into the details once we all...
I'm okay with going
Don?
forward with the hearing.
Mary?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Okay. Does anyone in the public or online wish to speak on this while the public hearing is open? Okay.
Move to close the public hearing.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion's been made to close the public hearing and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. Board deliberation, conversations, I'll start with Larry.
Well, I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself, but, you know, you read the packet and they've delayed, they've requested for postponement, as Attorney Blake has said, this is one of several. But in addition to that, they haven't fulfilled any of the health, the conservation, been delayed even longer. And we also have it's in our packet, so it's public, a very disturbing letter of past performances in other towns. I think we should move ahead and decide tonight.
Thank you. John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the public's benefit, I just want to point out that this is cycled out for the second year of the license. It's 2 years of non-performance. And through you, Mr. Chair, I'd like to ask the health director whether there's any evidence at all that anything relative to a new septic system has actually started.
No, they haven't even scheduled test holes yet, which would be the first step.
Okay, but in my mind, before you can have building rehabilitated and move forward and open it, the fundamental problem here is it is not capable of operating as a food and liquor establishment because it doesn't have a standard septic system, nor has it one day opened in 2 years. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you. Mary?
I'm done. There's no need to discuss this.
Julie?
I feel the same. I mean, we've got information from every department that nothing's been done. The last time they were here, well, maybe it was the previous, I think June, July, whenever that was. They talked about 3 months and going for the permit, for the septic. Nothing's happened, so.
If I may, just one, to follow up on the comment Don made, we really bent over backwards to work with him. We agreed to go with paper plates, to give him a break on the septic system, and that never occurred either. So it's not for lack of our trying to help a local business, just that nothing coming back from that.
Okay. Tonight's exercise really was to get an update. Their license has expired for last season. Seasonal licenses expire January 15th. Renewal packets go out in February, and then we usually vote those towards the end of March. So there's really no action the board needs to take tonight. Looking forward, and I believe I'll call on Jeff Blake. Jeff, that's correct, right?
Mr. Chairman, I believe you are correct. The license has expired, and there is no action now to take. Certainly, when it comes time for a renewal, then this will be something that I think what you should do tonight is I think you should find they failed to exercise their license even last year. That way, when they come for a renewal, you're going to be able to rely on that and say, look, you failed to exercise your license, and we're not going to renew unless and until you're able to provide us with adequate assurances that you actually can exercise a license. And when I say that, I'd like to somewhat charge the jury, if I may. Under Chapter 138, Section 77, it says, and this is the state law, the licensing authority may, after hearing or reasonable opportunity therefore, cancel any license issued under this chapter if the licensee ceases to conduct the licensed business. Okay? I think that it would be proper tonight for you to find that they failed to conduct the licensed business over the last year. Additionally, with respect to your regulations, at regulation 1.19A, it says here licenses are granted to serve the public need, and to that end, licensees are expected to operate the license for a substantial number of hours on all days when the premises are permitted to be open under the terms of the license. In the case of alcoholic beverages licenses, the number of which are limited according to statute, no licensee may close its place of business for any reason other than the following. Upon approval of a request, you, the licensing authority, all holidays and religious days, a closing of 1 day or more days per week upon approval of the licensing authority, and a closing due to an act of God. Now, any licensee intending to close a place of business whether on a temporary or permanent basis, must notify the licensing authority in writing before such closing, stating the reason and length of such closing and obtain approval. Failure to provide such notice may result in the suspension or revocation of the license. If the licensing authority becomes aware of a license not being exercised, it may conduct a hearing to obtain a status update. Exactly what you've done. The authority reserves the right to require the licensee to appear before the authority every 3 months from that point until the business has commenced or resumed operations, or the licensee has transferred or turned back back to the town. You've done that. And the authority reserves the right to revoke a license at any time if it deems that the public good is not being served. I would suggest that pursuant to the ABCC's rules, or at least cases, they would allow you to cancel a license under Chapter 138, Section 77, until you've given the establishment a 6-month notice. Under your regulations, you're to require at least an update every 3 months. You have more than done that. And in my opinion, as a result, you could make a finding tonight that for the calendar year 2022, the establishment has failed to meet the public need, and therefore their license should, the license should be canceled for the prior year. I know that it might sound academic, right? Their license has already expired, but at this point, I think it's important to put these folks on notice, because when they put in an application for a renewal, you're going to say, we're not going to renew based on what happened last year. So I'd like finding on the record.
Thank you, Attorney Blake. Before we get to a motion, Attorney Blake, probably a question to you. The licensing agent for the town of Harwich has indicated that they have not filed a manager of record change with the town of Harwich, and we're not sure that we even have the right address for these folks. But if you remember, they sent a letter getting rid of the manager of record and taking them off all of their documents, but they've failed to indicate a manager of record. What should we do to send the renewal packet so that we are on record sending the renewal packet and letting them fairly apply? What should we do with that? They sent it directly to ABCC, and ABCC sent it back to us, and it was incomplete, no query checks. We have incomplete paperwork.
Or I think what you should do is you should send the renewal packet over to the owner of the establishment at this point. The fact that they have not provided us with a manager so that we can run the query check is certainly going to be a basis for a non-renewal or non-issuance of a license. But at this point, I think we ought to send it over to them and give them the opportunity to provide us with a completed application.
Given we're not sure we have the correct address, should we send it to the attorney of record that contacted us tonight, saying they would be here?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Don?
We could have a discussion. I just want to put out a motion so that we can have something to pivot around. I move that as a finding of fact, that we find that the applicant has failed during the entirety of the 2022 license period to meet the public need, despite numerous opportunities to address this lack of use through hearings at the Board of Selectmen level and the Board of Health level, and therefore we find that he's in violation of the license, and that we are revoking it.
Second.
We're not revoking it, we're just,
He said it.
Jeff, you want it, it's been moved and seconded, we can alter it. We weren't revoking.
So I think the finding is good enough. I think the finding is good enough. The very first part of the motion.
Because right now
The
they
found
don't
that
have.
Okay, I'll take back the revocation, but the rest of it is foundational.
Thank you. And second's good
Second
with,
Yes.
takes that back.
with
yeah.
that out? Okay. All right, moved and seconded, discussion. Larry? Don? Mary? Julie?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. Thank you. Public hearing notice for the next public hearing.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, are you all set with me, or would you like me to stay on?
We're all set, Jeff, thank you.
Unless you want more entertainment.
Thank you. Happy New Year,
I think
everyone.
you should stay on.
Yeah, I do too.
Thank you.
It's on our dime.
Go ahead, Attorney Blake. You're all set.
I said Happy New Year to everyone.
Thank
See you later.
as well.
Thank you.
Some people would pay to see this, Jeff. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Notice of public hearing for a harbor management plan. The Harwich Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing on January 17th, 2023, no earlier than 6:30 p.m. Where are we here?
6:30 on there?
It says it on the published public meeting notice.
Mr. Chairman, I recommend you take up consent agenda at least.
Yep,
There we go.
come back to this at 6:30.
I move that we vote to approve the selectmen meeting minutes for January 3rd, 2023, January 9th, 2023, with a full discussion for 7 minutes.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Go ahead, Mary.
I'd just like to comment that it's very nice that we're now doing minutes from the last couple of weeks. It's a lot clearer to remember what happened and didn't. So kudos to your staff for doing that.
Thank you for that. I'll certainly pass it along, and couldn't agree more.
Well, that took a minute.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. We can take up new business A. Board discussion on priorities for the Real Estate and Open Space Committee. And this comes from being asked by the chair of the Real Estate Open Space what we would like them to work on. Is there anything board-wise other than continuing to identify owners unknown and miscellaneous parcels? Is there specifics? And I'll start with Don.
No, actually, I've said this before. They're doing a really good job. The entire breadth of their responsibilities, both preservation of land, building of land, putting land back in the private sector again. I mean, so if they could continue that assessment of what's possible to be able to resolve titles, I think it would be great, because they've made 2 years of earnest effort on that.
Thank you, Don. Mary?
I agree. I wouldn't have anything else to ask them to do.
Julie?
No, I agree too. They've done a great job.
Larry?
Yes, nice job.
They have a meeting on the 20th, and they're going to discuss it as a group. And then I would say that if there's anything that the group comes up with direction-wise, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Elaine Shovlin, Chair of Real Estate and Open Space. Yes, we have a meeting Friday, and at that meeting, Gail McAleer from the Assessor's Office is going to join us, and that's going to be the biggest part of the meeting, is to go over, because you can say we can keep looking at properties, but we'd kind of like to know which ones may have already been resolved, so we're not still looking at them. You know, we can cross them off the list and move on. So hopefully Friday, we'll get a clear picture of what's still out there, what's been added back into the tax roll and what isn't. So that's where we are with Friday, and hopefully then we can come up with another plan.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you.
I will attend on Friday and then bring back to the board any information that you come up with at that meeting.
All right, thank you. Always glad to have you.
Thank you. Have a good time.
Finish the whole meeting.
Well, let's do new business B. Vote to authorize a gift account to be set up to accept gifts for the Veterans Memorial located at Evergreen Cemetery. Robin?
Robin Kelly, Cemetery Administrator. The Harwich Cemetery Commission is requesting to set up a gift account in order to receive donations towards our Veterans Memorial Park at Evergreen Circle. The commission has put forward an article for this year's town meeting for Revolutionary War and Civil War memorials, designed, built, and installed in our Walk of Remembrance. The total estimates are $232,984 plus contingencies. Harwich has 284 Revolutionary War veterans and 146 Civil War veterans. In 2025, it'll be the 250th anniversary of the Revolutionary War, and we are hoping that this article passes at town meeting so it can be ready for a year-long celebrations that are being planned. We have several veterans agencies as well as private citizens who'd like to donate to this project. I have been meeting with the DAR, the Daughters of the American Revolution, and the SAR, the Sons of the American Revolution. I'm going to quote Tara Baker real quick. She's the regent for the DAR. The members of the Captain Joshua Gray and Jonathan Hatch chapter. The members of our chapter have worked with and will continue to work with the town of Harwich. We have dedicated hundreds of hours over the past 3 years on this project, and we are actively volunteering to dedicate even more hours in the future. We believe in it, and we believe without these projects, like in our history, will be lost. I'm attending their joint meeting of the DAR and SAR this Saturday, the 21st, and hopefully I'll have the donation forms available for them. Finally, all the funds collected will go towards these memorials, and this will keep the CPC updated on the totals that I receive so that they know how much money they'll have to give me if they approve my article. So they have a lot of asks this year, the CPC, so I'm just trying to defray the cost for historic preservation.
Thank you, Robin. Joe, anything from you on this one?
No, pretty straightforward action by the board, but unless and until you do that, the fundraising can't occur,
Okay.
and we cannot receive the gifts.
Comments or questions? Julie?
No, I don't have any.
Mary?
Just, I'm assuming since you've said that this is appropriate, that a
Absolutely.
town can do that.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
I've worked with the finance director, as has Robin, and this is the proper way to go.
okay, thank you.
Larry?
Nothing to add, because the request is we set up a fund. At this point, it's not a request for funding itself. It's a way to do it, so.
Thank you, Larry. Don?
So, through you, Mr. Chair, that would be the appropriate motion to set up, to vote to approve a fund?
Yes, I think it would be to authorize a gift account to be set up to accept gifts for the Veterans Memorial located in Evergreen Cemetery.
Mr. Chair, I move that we vote to authorize a gift account to be set up to accept gifts for the Veterans Memorial located at Evergreen Cemetery as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Robin. We got one more. Why don't we do the new business C?
It's 6:30.
New business C, vote to approve temporary closure request from Blue Stripe LLC, Cape Sea Grill, 31 C Street.
I can do that if you want. Don.
Yeah, go ahead.
I move to approve the temporary closure request from Blue Stripe LLC, known as Cape Sea Grill, 31 C Street.
For a
Second.
period of,
February 1st to February 28th, that was your motion?
That was my motion.
And that was the second?
Correct.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. Go ahead, Don.
Okay, we're back to the hearing again. Now, the notice of public hearing, Harbor Management Plan. The Harwich Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing on January 17th, 2023, no earlier than 6:30 p.m. in the Don B. Griffin Room located at Town Hall, 732 Main Street, Harwich, for the purpose of reviewing proposed amendments to the Harbor Management Plan, Appendix A, Special Purpose Mooring Assignment. All members of the public having an interest in this topic are cordially invited to attend. Remote participation is also offered. Please see the posted agenda for dial-in information. It's signed Michael D. McCaskill, Chairman, Julie E. Kavanaugh, Larry G. Ballantyne, Mary E. Anderson, Donald F. Howell, Harwich Board of Selectmen, and it was published in the Cape Cod Chronicle, December 29th, 2022, and January 5th, 2023.
Thank you. Public hearing is open. John?
I hate when that happens. Sorry about that. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, John Rendon, Harbor Master. Pretty straightforward. Special purpose moorings are really designed for businesses, yacht clubs who promote boating and boating education. And so Pleasant Bay Community Boating approached me and went to the waterways for a number of special purpose moorings to support their programs specific to their cat boat fleet. They have 8, I believe. Susan Leahy from Pleasant Bay Community Boating is here with us if you have any specific questions, but they have a cat boat fleet that will occupy these 8 public special purpose moorings. Most of their mooring field, or most of their moorings that they currently utilize are on the other side in Orleans, the town of Orleans waterways. And so These really are the only ones, only moorings that would be within Harwich waterways. And Pleasant Bay Community Boating pretty much owns all of the property along the shoreline where these will be placed. It's not like they're going to be placed in front of, other people's private homes. It works, it fits their needs. And per the harbor management plan, they're permitted by myself under Mass General Law, but it requires your authority under because they are special purpose moorings. So if you have any questions, be happy to answer.
Thank you.
Sure.
Anyone in the public wish to speak on this? Anyone online? Motion to close the
I
public hearing.
move that we close the public hearing to deliberate.
Second.
Moved and seconded to close the public hearing. Board deliberation, Don?
We have to approve the vote.
Oh. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. Don?
No. I think it's wonderful. I'm familiar with the operation, and if this doesn't qualify, I don't know what would. But thanks, John.
Agreed, thank you.
Larry?
No, I 100% approve. Does it affect any of the docks going off? 'Cause I know Pleasant Bay Alliance has some fairly restrictive.
Do they affect Pleasant Bay Community Boating's docks? Or?
Yeah, any additional docks resulting from this, or?
No, this is strictly moorings. Last year, I think this was their first year, maybe their second, but Pleasant Bay Community Boating recently redid their docks, made it all handicap accessible. It's a beautiful facility that they put in recently, but this is on top of that.
Thank you.
Mary?
Based on your letter and recommendation, I'm assuming the town has no other need for moorings in that area.
We don't. Our mooring fields are established. We have, of course, Brown Cove, and then in Pleasant Bay, we have mooring fields as well. Our moorings don't go anywhere as, far in that direction, so,
Great.
nope,
Thank you.
not at all.
Julie?
All right, sounds also that it's going to be a little bit safer too, right, based on your letter, so.
Will,
I have no
absolutely.
problem with that.
Need a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the request made to the Board of Selectmen for permitting 8 special purpose moorings by the Harbor Master to Pleasant Bay Community Boating, PBCB, per section 3.13 of reference A as contained in our package.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. Thank you, John.
Thanks very much.
All right, next is a joint meeting with the Bylaw Charter Review Committee.
Got a little literature.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sandy.
Thank you. Okay, good. All right, we'll call to order the January 16th, 2023 meeting of the Harwich Bylaw Charter Committee.
17.
Is it the 17th?
Time flies when you're having a good time.
What did I say? Oh, old habits.
I miss votes.
Okay, anyhow, we'll call to order on the 17th. That's a good plan. I just wanted to point out, before we get in too far into whatever it is we're going to be discussing tonight, what I've given you, we have all been operating on the charter versions on the website. That is not the latest, greatest version. What you have in front of you is the language that was passed at the May 2021 annual town meeting and again at the ballot in 2023. And one of the reasons why that's important is I know there's been a lot of discussion about more than or less than $50,000. That was covered in that amendment. So it's $50,000 or more. So that was something that we've been talking about. We don't need to talk about anymore.
Perfect. Thank you. So the question, the first question was legal effect of quantum of vote on the capital plan. And that's related to chapter 965.
Which is also,
Go ahead.
which is also covered in this amendment.
Okay.
That if it's the same 4 years plus that were adopted in the previous year, moving up with a new year 5, it's a simple majority. If you change any part of the previous 4-year plan, it requires a 2/3 vote.
Thank you.
I think that's
I'm
pretty,
going to give you
pretty plain.
Attorney Giorgio is here tonight with us also to answer any questions.
Oh, I'm sorry. There you go.
And we did also ask Attorney Giorgio to prepare an opinion for us ahead of tonight so that we had a legal opinion. Joe, do you want to add anything from what I've said or what Sandra said before we get started on?
Just that, I think to add on what Chair Hall just said, relevant for your discussion tonight is the second part of 965, any amendment to a previously adopted plan. And that was adopted at the 2019 annual town meeting. That went into effect after the town election, which was slightly delayed, I believe, until June of 2020. So that's been on the books since then. The 50,000 or more is the one that most recently went into effect. So, Mr. Chairman, you folks were discussing the capital plan generally. The question came up about amendments to it. So I believe on the first topic, the quantum of vote is relative to the second sentence under 965, a passage which has been in effect since June 2020.
And you reached out to KP Law under my direction to get a legal opinion.
Correct.
Attorney Giorgio, do you want to give us an overview of your opinion?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know whether
You can do the mic up there if you want, or you're welcome to sit in my seat and I'll move.
No, that's fine. This is great. Thank you. So I fell into the rookie trap of going online and going to your code. And so when I wrote the opinion, I wasn't aware of this subsequent amendment, but I don't think it really changes my opinion in any way. So every year, under this amendment, every year, the town meeting adopts a 5-year capital plan, and that's by a majority vote. I think that's pretty clear to everyone. Every year, the new capital plan that's adopted knocks off well, let me do this by way of an example. So in 2022, at the annual town meeting, you adopted, under this amendment, it would be a 5-year capital plan. The first year of that plan is fiscal year 23, right? So this coming May, you will adopt a new 5-year capital plan. 2023 will fall off, and you'll add another year on to the end. So each year, it's a new capital plan. It's a simple majority vote. So I think the issue is, how do we interpret the second sentence, which is any amendment to a previously adopted capital plan shall require a 2/3 vote at the annual town meeting? There's a principle of statutory construction that that you have to interpret the entire document as a harmonious whole. That's sort of the legalese expression. And so how do you interpret those two provisions consistently to make sense out of this particular provision in the charter? And I think the way to interpret this is that if during, in this case, fiscal year 23, there is an amendment proposed for the capital plan for whatever reason, there's a new project that comes up that you want to start in fiscal 23. The price is increased. You want to have a new, amend the amount that's identified in the capital plan. That requires a 2/3 vote of town meeting. But it has to occur at the annual town meeting. So this year, if you're going to make any change to the capital plan for fiscal year 23, it will require a 2/3 vote at the annual town meeting. At that annual town meeting, you're also going to adopt a new capital plan for the ensuing 5 years, and that requires a majority vote. So that's the way I would interpret this particular provision of the charter. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Mayor?
So do I understand then a change to the first year requires the 2/3 vote, but if we were to make changes to years 2 through 5, it's a simple majority?
Right, but it's not years 2 through 5 at that point. It's, or 2 through 5. It's a new 5-year capital plan.
So years 2 through 5 are just treated like they're brand new?
Yes.
It doesn't matter what was there
Yes,
before?
because that is the
Okay.
new capital plan that's going to be adopted at the 2023 annual town meeting.
Thank you.
It's only if you're going to change something in this fiscal year
Current year.
would require a 2/3 vote.
Julie?
No, I think I follow that pretty well.
Larry?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Mary, because that was confusing to me as well.
Yeah.
When an amount changes, do we follow the same rules? Does it have to change $50,000 to, in other words, if we have a capital budget item for 100,000 and we find the price has gone up to 110, does that fulfill a new, an amendment or not?
That would be an amendment because your capital
So
plan,
the
let's say,
50,000 doesn't mean anything at this point. It's any dollar value at all.
right, that only identifies what goes on the plan. So anything $50,000 or more has to be on the plan. And if, for example, you had a $100,000 capital expenditure on the plan last year, and you went out to bid this year, and it's now $110,000, you have to amend the capital plan in order to appropriate the money in this fiscal
I
year.
just wondered-
And that's a
I just wondered if
2/3
there's any
vote.
flexibility within that $50,000 range, which would,
So I'm not quite sure I understand, Larry.
well, I was hoping there'd be some flexibility that the 100,000 in your example you gave was not absolute. If we came in with a few, that might fall under the same $50,000 to require an amendment that there, what I'm looking for is some flexibility in a small range. You're saying there's none. I'm still not making sense?
I don't know. I think the example, I'd like to hear, I think Sandy had her hand up. I'd
Yeah.
like to hear
I-
from Sandy first.
I do, and all due respect to Attorney Giorgio, but I disagree with him entirely. As far as the first year requiring a 2/3 vote and the rest requiring a simple majority to change it, it's almost not worth arguing about because it doesn't matter, because the effect is the same, because you're working on the year you're working in. But when the town meeting adopts a capital plan, it adopts the whole capital plan. And the point was to change any part of what the town meeting adopted in the previous year requires a 2/3 vote. If you have the 2/3 vote in the first year, effectively it's the same, because every year if something's going to move up, it's going to be the first year, and you're going to vote 2/3. However, on the idea of the money, the capital plan is about the budgets. The monies are estimates. The monies for any of these projects are voted in articles. They're not meant to be, this is all you can spend and no more, or this is exactly what you need to spend. Those are just plug figures so people can see, what the totals are over time and what their bonding and debt is going to look like over time. So don't get attached to the numbers. They're just estimates.
Will you just repeat again what you disagree with the attorney about?
The fact that you have to amend the plan to change the numbers,
The sequencing, you mean?
you have to, to change the amounts, the estimates that are contained in the plan. You've got the project, you've got the estimate. The estimate is an estimate. It's designed to be an estimate. The money, the actual money for a project is voted through a separate article, town meeting, whatever that happens to be. This isn't an appropriations article.
Okay.
As far as is that your question, Don?
kind of, because I was wondering, I mean, if, Mr. Chair, is it okay?
Don't want to get too far into any more weeds, though, until John gets to respond with
No,
a
but I mean,
disagreement, but go ahead.
it actually is
Yeah.
to this. I'm not sure what the practical effect of what you're saying is, John, because the actual expenditure of the monies consequent to the adoption of the capital plan in the year one have already been effectuated at that same town meeting, and the next town meeting is only a month away from the closeout of the fiscal year. There is no, I mean, we're not gonna take a project off the list affirmatively.
Attorney Giorgio.
So I'm not sure what the practical effect is either, Selectman Howell, to be honest with you. I guess I could conceive of a circumstance, however, where at this coming May town meeting, you have identified, you want to move a project up from the second year to the first year, for
You said it
example.
was only the first year that we'd be talking about with that vote.
I'm sorry?
Your earlier comment was we'd only be talking about 23 requiring any kind of future action, that the rest of the plan gets renewed every year. That's what you said.
Right. But if you decided that you needed to add, in essence, a new item in fiscal '23 to the capital plan that was not included in the prior vote, that would be, in effect, an amendment to the 2023 portion of the plan. I think it's highly unlikely, because the other option would simply, let's say you get, on the run-up to town meeting, you decide, gee, we need that pumper truck in fiscal '24, or we need it in fiscal '23. The easiest solution is put it in your new capital plan for fiscal '24 and appropriate the money at the May town meeting. It probably would be a 2/3 vote anyway, because it's a borrowing. But you've now adopted a capital plan that has that expenditure, which you could start spending on July 1st of 2023. And that is consistent with the newly adopted capital plan. But if there was a true emergency where you had to spend that money on, let's say, May 10th, then I think you're looking at an amendment to last year's capital plan, which would require a 2/3 vote. At least that's how I read the charter.
Don, follow?
I'll wait, because there's the two other issues that just don't make sense to me.
Larry?
Yeah, thank you, Sandra, for that. I think we're talking two different items. One is adding another item to the capital budget, which I agree. What you've said, and what we all said, it takes a 2/3 vote. The thrust of my question was, these, as Sandra, you mentioned, these are estimates. If I have a capital budget for 100 and I need $110,000 to complete that, is that called an amendment? And your first response was yes, and that makes it impossible to go forward, because we're never that accurate. Our precision's not always that good that
Right.
the estimate is what the final is. I wish it were, but it's not always is.
Well, I think I certainly respect what Sandy said, and I think that's a reasonable interpretation.
I'm just
Now,
saying there are
what's
two
the
different
difference,
items.
though? Suppose it's 300,000 as opposed to 100,000.
Well, that's why I raised about 50,000. It was less than a capital item, then maybe that is maybe that's where we draw the line. I don't
Yeah.
know.
You know, when you approve a debt exclusion for a project, and then you go out to bid, and the bids come in higher, the Department of Revenue applies a rule of thumb of, this is just as an example, of 10%. If the increase so you need a 9% increase in your prior appropriation. Department of Revenue generally takes the position that you don't need to repeat the debt exclusion ballot question. If it's over 10%, it's considered a different project. Now, that's a rule of thumb you could look at, I suppose, but there has to be, at some point, an increase in the cost of the project renders it a new project because of a significant increase in the cost. But I'm a little bit agnostic on that. I mean, I don't, I'm not sure that I mean, I could certainly understand an interpretation that if it's in the plan for fiscal '23 and there's a dollar amount specified, if you're just having a modest increase in the price, because as Sandy said, it was an estimate, then you wouldn't have to amend the plan at all. But there's got to be some limit on that.
Thank you, John. I've got Mary, then I've got Sandy, then I've got Linda. The hands I've seen so far.
I just wanted to clarify, I think I understood you, Sandy, but I want to make sure. So the whatever year has all these projects, and they've got numbers associated with them. If the only change next year is that a couple of the numbers are different, we don't need to amend the capital plan. We just put it in the individual articles with the new number. Did I understand that correctly?
Sandy?
Completely. This is,
agree with that as well.
this, I tend to be a straight line thinker. I like to keep things simple. This gets very convoluted when you get into these kinds of discussions. But this is a capital plan. It's not a capital budget. So the plan is, we want to build a new Main Street, and we want to estimate that we're gonna have to bond $100,000 for it. By the time you get to a lot of these things, especially in the out years, of course your prices are going to go up. I mean, that's just a given. But you haven't voted the funding on any of it until you adopt the plan, work the plan, take care of the first year. The voters will, if you need to make a change and move something up from a prior year, I've never seen an instance where, in the past, when this was operated in the way that it's structured now, and it was for almost 30 years structured this way, that the town meeting, given reasonable arguments, ever turned it down. But this is not a funding article, this is a plan.
Thank you.
Before I get to Linda, John, any response to that?
Well, as I said initially, you're going to adopt a new capital plan in May for fiscal '24. Now, if there's an item that was previously approved where the price is increased, or you actually have bids at this point, remember, that's a new capital plan. It's a majority vote, and you change the amount in the new capital plan. The only circumstance where I would see where the 2/3 vote would become an issue is if you're going to make a significant change. Let's just keep this simple, a significant change to the estimated cost of a project that you're going to expend in 2023, not 2024.
Okay. Linda?
Being also fairly,
Linda was first.
I have to stick up for my colleagues.
being fairly straightforward as well, I'm just trying to get to some yes or no answers. Because I think we're talking the plan, and then we're talking spending articles and votes to do a 2.5 override to fund something. So sticking with the capital plan itself, as I understand what you said, Giorgio, that last year in 2022, we had 23, 24, 25, 26, and 27. This year's capital plan, we're going to have 24 to 28. Yes or no, if there was something in last, and everybody, theoretically, people then move up a year. But if something in 2025 last year is now determined to be really important to move up another year to 2024, and I'm not even changing dollars here, I'm changing timing. If 2025 project is moved to 2024, is that, this is yes or no, a 2/3 vote or a simple majority?
Simple majority.
Okay. That confuses me, because I see because it's changing a previously adopted capital plan.
Correct.
Correct. And the previous adopted capital plan had it in 2025. If it sits there, it's okay. But if it moves to another year, you're changing what you already adopted.
Julie, I'm going to let John respond to that.
Yeah,
Then
yeah.
I'll get to you. I don't want him to lose anything. There's a reason we invited
So
him.
I'm looking for the yes or no thing, and not try to get caught up in what it's, the price tag, or we have to make a vote on it as an article, or we have to vote a 2.5 override. Leave all that in the parking lot.
The only,
Go ahead.
the only way to read those two sentences as a harmonious whole is if you move that project up to 2024, you are doing that as part of the adoption of a new 5-year capital plan. That's a majority vote.
Okay, so.
If you wanted to move something forward into 2023, that's a 2/3 vote. Because the previously adopted capital plan was the one you approved in 2022, and now you're going to add an item to be expended in 2023 before you can adopt a new capital plan. That's the way I see it.
Thank you, John. Julie?
So, thank you, and I'm trying to hang on to all of that because that all makes sense to me, and that's where I thought this is how we got to this conversation as well, right?
Yes.
Was that we had, the question was, and Dawn wanted to make sure that they didn't move out of sequence. We had the discussion, excuse me, from our committee saying it's a capital plan. For that reason, it's a plan. Nothing is steadfast and must stay in that particular year. And so to John's point, that if you're going to move things around, it's a simple majority vote. If you're trying to amend that plan prior to adopting a new plan, then you have an issue. I don't think we had an issue based on conversation we had, which I think was either last week or the previous week, I can't recall.
And to your point, we're having this conversation because questions were asked and there seemed to be a lot of confusion.
Right.
I'm going to go back to Linda because I'm not sure she was done.
No, I'm getting to, that's what I was looking for, was a yes or no, because therefore I think that section 965 here, I think Mr. Giorgio said that the only time you would have any capital plan votes would be at an annual town meeting. So therefore, this line almost becomes irrelevant, except in the odd case where something had to bubble up and be spent immediately. So therefore, all the changes to the capital plan each year are simple majority, with the exception of 2025 moving to 2023.
John?
Yes.
Okay.
Say that one more time at the microphone. Sorry.
Yes, that's correct, Linda.
I saw Sandra, and then I
Just a-
saw Mary, and then I saw Don.
Just a comment. It's almost a Seinfeld discussion. Because the only year that's really important is this one. So whether you do a majority vote on the rest of the plan or a 2/3 vote, what we need to know at the end of the day is simplicity. Any addition or change to year one requires a 2/3 vote. Beyond that, I don't think anybody's going to get into a huge debate about this again, I hope.
And my only hope is to clarify it tonight, because there has been,
Well,
it has not been clarified.
It almost doesn't matter.
Well, it matters to me.
That's what he,
Yeah, well, I understand that.
Yeah.
This conversation
Yeah.
matters to me so that we're not all in different
right, I get it.
directions.
Yeah, understood.
Mary, you were next?
I didn't think I had my hand up.
Fine. Don?
I thought I did. Through you, Mr. Chair, John, I mean, just a couple of thoughts here. I mean, because how long have you been our lawyer?
I don't remember. No, a long time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because
15 years.
in practice, you never raised this issue ever once, and we actually did do 2/3 votes to this is about sequencing. It's always been about sequencing. It's about planning to plan. So
Yeah.
where are we going to spend money in, just that from your mouth, what's the value of the plan after year one if every single year we just adopt it by a simple majority and change it whatever sequence we want to, so that the public has no clue about what to expect in the next 3 or 4 years?
This is only about the quantum of vote. The voters every year get to decide on priorities by adopting a 5-year capital plan.
But we had a capital budget, and we chose to go back to this because we said it had no practical limitations then on sequencing things. Every year was a new 5-year plan, every year. And I don't buy the 6 weeks argument, because really what you're talking about is something that needs a supplemental appropriation, which is a whole other thing. Do we even have the money to be able to appropriate? So
it's totally different.
So it's a moot point within the plan, because the plan itself doesn't actually allow you to do anything other than to actually ask for the appropriation.
Right. So I would point out, though, Don, if you look at the former version of this provision, which of course has now been amended, but there was a very interesting provision in the former version of this that said, any article submitted for the annual or special town meeting warrant which requests a capital outlay, but which is not included in the current year of the capital outlay plan, shall require approval by the Capital Outlay Committee, the Board of Selectmen, and the Finance Committee, and any such article shall require a 2/3 majority vote at town meeting. That's what this section previously said, which makes it pretty clear that it's in the first year. But when you look at the amendment that is now in effect, there are 2 different sentences. How do you interpret those so that you give full meaning to each of them, each of those sentences? And that's why I'm saying the only way to interpret the current charter in terms of the 2/3 vote requirement is if you want to make a change in the first year of your capital plan before you adopt a new one, it takes a 2/3 vote.
So John, just one other thing then. So we got 965 as it currently is constructed.
Yeah.
Okay? A simple majority vote, which is where you're hanging your hat about the harmonious language.
Yes.
Of the vote of the town meeting shall be required to adopt the 5-year capital plan as submitted. If that sentence actually said, and and I know you're here for now, but I'm here to give some sort of forecast to the townspeople, because as Sandy said, and I agree, I've been here for 32 years myself, I've never seen town meeting with a legitimate argument not sequence something just because it was 2/3 versus 1/2. But if that said, your simple majority of the town meeting shall be required to adopt the 5-year capital plan as previously submitted, you'd have a different feeling?
Now I think we're getting into the weeds.
No, because actually he's
not what it
grouping,
says.
I said if it said that.
Could you repeat the new
Yeah,
language?
If the language were, a simple majority of the town meeting shall be required to adopt a 5-year capital plan as previously adopted.
Yeah, that would make a difference.
Okay, that's all I want to know.
Thank you, Don. Mary?
Now I do have a question. I thought I understood, and now with all of this, I'm circling. So I'm going to try my question again.
Okay.
A 2/3 vote is only required for a change in the current year, whatever that year is, and the change is either that we've brought something from one of the other years, or we've brought something that wasn't even on the plan.
I'm not saying that. I say I disagree with that.
What's that?
I am not saying that. I disagree with that.
Oh,
Because I go on to the next sentence, which says, any amendment to a previously adopted capital plan. Any amendment to a previously adopted capital plan. I disagree with the premise. The effect of it, you're still having to do 2/3 in the year you're in. So, you know, how much time you'd want to spend arguing over the other 4 years, whether they require a 1/2 or a 2/3, I'm not really sure is worth the time, but I read that as any amendment. I think that's fairly clear to the plan as a whole, as adopted in a previous year. And it's really very simple, and I think it's being way overcomplicated.
well, I've gotten more confused. So it's a new item brought into any year in the 5-year?
Doesn't have to be a new item. It can be
Resequenced.
something that's resequenced within the plan.
Right,
But
right.
it says any amendment, not only the amendments to the first year.
Okay.
And I think
okay.
that's fairly clear. So that's my
Okay.
opinion. It differs from your attorney's opinion.
Okay.
That's not the first time that's happened, is it?
What's that?
That we've had a difference of opinion.
You and I?
Yeah.
No, that's fairly consistent. I look forward to our disagreements, though.
So the,
I will like to note, I think I won one or two of.
the item changing requires the 2/3. The dollars changing does not.
That's just
Okay.
an estimate. And
Right.
maybe we should put some language in that makes that more clear. Because I know that the chairman of the Capital Outlay Committee, when we talked to him at our meeting, was having a real struggle with that idea. It's not a budget, it's a plan. It's a different thing. And the whole point of it, the whole point of the exercise is to take, the 5 years and say to the voters, we're going to try to even our debt or these expenditures to the extent possible so that you're not getting a huge spike. Now, we've got some stuff coming in, obviously, that you can't work around. But it gives them an overview of, okay, this year we're going to build a firehouse, next year we're going to build a police station, next year we're going to build a school. And the reason it came to be in the first place was not, as all due respect, Joe, was not punitive. It was not vengeance on a previous town administrator. This goes back to the early 90s, when the problem was you would plan as a Board of Selectmen various projects that you felt you could budget for in a previous year, and some department would come roaring in from the outside with their own article and go on a town meeting floor and hijack the meeting and get something that wasn't planned for in that year. So the problem was that this could happen. The solution was that we decided to do a capital plan so that this required a 2/3 vote of town meeting to change it if the fire department suddenly decided it wanted to be built before the new town hall. Does that make sense?
I think I got it. Thank you.
Okay.
Any response right now, John? You're good. Okay. Julie?
So when I go back to this 965, I go back to what John said previously, which was what the previous charter said. Now I understand what you're saying with the revisions, but ultimately I go back to a capital plan. We have a committee dedicated to coming up with a capital plan. They agree that it's a plan and that anything can change on a year-to-year basis. So to your point of somebody maybe possibly hijacking, I get that. But on the same token, you've got a capital plan. And if for some reason that either A, wasn't on the capital plan, that's a different discussion because it has to be on the plan to be relative to this section. So going back again to our discussion and what brought us all here tonight is the idea that if we want to resequence 23 to 28 or 27, whatever that 5 years, ultimately, we feel we should be able to do that because it's a plan. I think John was the one who brought it up. I didn't feel this way. But you didn't want to see that change. You wanted to see it in the year that it was due, correct? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
No, it is, and I'm completely looking in a different direction because I'm just trying to represent some stability and predictability to the general public. It has nothing to do with our authority.
Right, but that was your
I've never seen
point.
it actually exercised as a negative, ever.
No,
It's just giving
but-
everybody the opportunity to opine on it
Right.
in a meeting, because in a practical effect, this interpretation has no meaning at all for 2/3 anymore, because it's 6 weeks and the whole fiscal year's done.
Right, so I guess I'm just trying to simplify it again, one more layer, because like Mary said, she's going back, right? And it is confusing, because different things are being said in different examples. I think if you stick to the idea that it's a capital plan, and if you're going to change anything in that capital plan, forget money, don't even think about the money. If you're going to change that plan from year 27 to 24, because we are saying it's a priority, that we should have the ability to do that at town meeting with a simple majority vote. It's not an issue that we've suddenly thrown an article on or a number, or forget the number, a project that didn't exist on the capital plan. That's Sandy's point, is somebody can come in and just say, bang, this is a priority. We're saying you can switch them from year to year, as long as it's not in the current year. But we got here in this discussion because Don, I believe, felt that it should stay where it belonged, and we did not. I don't know if
Unless
that's a
there was a
fair
two-thirds
assumption. So that's the
One second,
summary.
Sandra. And that's like if we wanted to add the Hope and Go intersection this year, we would need 2/3 to do so.
Right.
Because it's never been
So
on the plan.
Linda's had her
Right.
hand up first, so I'm gonna go with Linda, and then I'm gonna go to Sandra. Anita, were you, you're in there next? Okay. Linda, Sandra, Anita.
Thank you, sir. No one is saying that you don't have the authority or the right to move the new school from 27 to 24 or to 1992 or whatever. That's not the question here. The question is how many noses need to be counted. So it's either a simple majority.
Right.
And this, the way this language is, I also am with Sandy in our group, is that it takes a 2/3 vote to move it from here to there. There is nobody saying that you don't have the authority to do that, or there's not a reason for it. What we're talking about is the number of noses to be counted.
Understood.
So, and I think that our position, the way we read this and the way it was written, says any change, any amendment to something that was previously accepted, I understand it's a new capital plan, that now it takes a 2/3 vote to move the school from 2027 to 2024, or 2023. And I do agree, Mr. McCaskill, that if we wanted to put Hope and Go, that would take a 2/3 vote, absolutely, because it's never been on the capital.
I'm crystal clear on that part.
So
Right.
I agree with you on that.
Sandra.
The thing to keep in mind at the end of the day is this whole exercise is designed to inform the voters. So if you have a capital plan that they voted previous year, and you want to change the order of things in any number of different ways, there shouldn't be a problem to require a 2/3 vote for all of those changes. But what it does, and, you know, as a broad statement, is that it puts the voters at notice. Somebody has to get up on town meeting floor and say, look, we changed the order, and it requires a 2/3 vote. That doesn't seem like such a heavy lift. And
Well, I
it
would
is-
only give you, my opinion is it is a planning document. It is a living document that can be changed. And when we're talking about the out years, if all of a sudden the quint is absolutely needed, and we change that from 25 to 24, why would we want to go with a 2/3 vote, or why would we have to go to a 2/3 vote? Because the public is looking at the capital plan. So we are giving them a plan. The plans change. Every year they get a right to change, make up their mind on the plan itself, and then every year they have the right to deny the quint. They don't have to vote for it. So I don't read it the same way you do. We certainly disagree, probably more than you and John. But I don't read it that way. And I do think it is a living document and a plan, and we're making it a lot more complex than it is. I'm gonna go to Anita because she was next.
The only, I respect you, but I disagree. If an article comes before town meeting, you're voting on that article. That's set in stone. So if you're going to change it, it has to go to the next town meeting for the voters to change. You can change it, but it also has to go back to the voters to say, hey, we're changing this. You guys can change it, know that something else has to come forward, but it still needs to be changed on town meeting floor, very simply.
The
Because
article,
you voted,
you're speaking of the article, not
That's-
the plan.
correct.
Okay.
But the article is the plan on town meeting floor that you're presenting, and that's voted on at town meeting. The plan is voted on at town meeting.
John, then Don.
So, Mr. Chairman, I guess the comment I would make is, Don indicated earlier that by my interpretation, the 2/3 vote means nothing. But I would posit that if you interpret it in the other way, then the majority vote means nothing. And 2/3 votes are not that easy to obtain, because that presents a lot of opportunity for the minority to impose its will on the majority. So I would I mean, even zoning, for example, the statute's been amended and allows a majority vote for a number of zoning amendments. And if anything, I think the town should be looking to make town meeting more of a majority vote body. Because 2/3 vote, it doesn't take a lot to stop something from happening. And you have to decide whether the first sentence is the important one or the second sentence is the important one. And if you want to require adoption of a capital plan by a 2/3 vote, you could do that. You could amend this charter, and then there would never be an issue. If you want to put in specific language that says, if it's on a previously adopted plan, it has to be a 2/3 vote to change it. You could do that. But those are policy questions that you all need to decide on.
Thank you. Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Let me just ask you a quick question, John. So with your interpretation, all 5 years of the plan exist, and somebody gets to the mic and says, I want to amend year one of what's currently being proposed. How many votes does that need?
Well, that's different. You're talking about an amendment to the motion on town meeting floor, which is to adopt the capital plan. And a motion to amend is a simple majority vote.
That's my concern, is we're open, you live by the sword, you die by the sword. If the level that you have to achieve, again, this hasn't been a problem. I hate creating problems that, in point of fact, actually haven't happened. But in past years, we have resequenced because, oh my gosh, we have a water tower problem, and year 5 is way too long to wait. We need to move that. And you're not voting 2/3 on the whole plan. You're only voting on the resequencing of that one thing. That's all that ever happened, ever. But my question is, if you put it this way and you say that the simple majority is the threshold, then you're inviting somebody to come up with an amendment that they could pass at town meeting in a much easier way than if it were 2/3, because 2/3 pretty much insulates, it's only the one thing, and it's only for moving in a certain up or down or completely from the outside in. And by the way, that has been how it's used. Something that was never part of the 5-year plan shoots into year 2, say. That has happened. It's a practical matter. I've never seen what you described ever happen in 32 years.
Thank you, Don. Larry?
Boy, this is a fun discussion. For me, Don, I'm going to argue with you on this one because I think you've gone too far. I think the plan is a plan. I do like the idea of having some vote go forward. I think it should not be so high to be unworkable, 50%. Because that's still not the, we still have to go to the article to vote the funds per se. And the problem is, in the years I've been involved, is, boy, if you go out just another year, things change. We get a rush item come up. We need to inform the voters, and you can do that with a less than 2/3. It gives them a vote. Doesn't vote the article in. And it's still, if we want to be, if our goal is to be, the objection before was that we changed the plan too often. Well, this did try to strengthen that by bringing it back for a 5-year plan that voted on it. But I don't want to make that such a high hurdle that we can't use common sense and say, well, if we buy this item now, it's a big savings, or we absolutely need it. And it's still, and then we still can argue about the article. So I would like to do that. Make it a little simpler, still have the plan, but not try to tie us down and say we have to jump through a lot of hoops if we have to change that. We have a capital budget, a capital outlay committee that I think is very responsible. I hate to say this, but I think we're reasonably responsible in presenting a capital plan.
Thank you.
And we should move forward with that.
Thank you, Larry. Joe, anything to add?
No.
Anyone else? Anyone in the public with anything to add? Sandra, you all set with this topic for the time being?
All set with the topic. Clearly, we have a disagreement. You all will do what you're going to do regardless. And maybe it'll come up as a point of order on town meeting floor at some point.
Okay. John, be ready for the point of order on town meeting floor?
That would be Mike.
Which would be up to the moderator.
Right. So,
If I'm here.
looking at the,
That's not funny.
any other changes? Discussion on any other changes?
Any other changes? We have a few things that we're talking about. Will at our next meeting be putting together our recommendations, and you can plan on receiving them sometime in February.
Okay. To our board. Larry, any other charter changes?
No, I think there's some items we talked about before, I presume you're coming back with, so I'll wait.
We have a little list. We did knock one thing off the list, though. We don't have to worry about the $50,000 question anymore.
Well, that, I guess before I get to Don, that brings me to, from the time that was voted, why did it take so long to get that changed on our website, and why are we working off of the wrong document?
Because our website is woefully behind in many, many ways. You cannot go and find election results past the presidential election of 2020. You cannot find a town meeting election results after 2014. This is something, once it went through the voting process and the ballot, and got whatever approvals it needed from the Attorney General's office, which is now a year and a half ago. It should have been put in the E-code.
Where does it go from the Attorney General's?
It goes to the town clerk to send up to the E-code people who put together all of our codes. And you don't know about this?
No, I'm just asking so that we can outline the process and figure out where it broke down, because clearly somewhere along the way, somebody
Well,
didn't
it
do
has,
something.
it has gotten to the E-code people, because I checked that. We checked that. I think Anita checked it for me, because she has a little experience with that. But it's in the works. But I think the last page of what I gave you is the notice in our E-code. And what it says is sort of interesting, because I hadn't seen this before either. The things you learn along the way. This is the list of things that have been incorporated, have been passed but not incorporated into the code. And what it says is these are not in the code. Once a new law has been codified, it will no longer appear in this section, which means once it's been put in the proper place in the big book of town codes, then, and hopefully at that point we can see it up on the website so everybody knows what's real.
We've made some great progress with a new IT director and
I
we're talking
heard
about
I
it,
heard
so.
her the other night, and it sounds like good things are coming, but we really, really need to work on that website.
Joe, did you get a copy of Sandra's handout?
I did. Yeah.
Okay. That last page is something for us to talk about?
So it's in the works, and everything's been done on this end as far as I can tell that needs to be done. It's just that it took a long time to get there. So that's where it is. But again, if you could get to that website with all due speed, I think it would make a huge difference to people, because it's just so hard to navigate. And I'm on it almost every day.
Done.
We're still on this.
We're on whatever
Linda.
subject you want to be on.
Larry might find this difficult to accept, but I'm not really a big fan of change. It's a constitution of the town. I really don't like changing more than it has to be changed, so I'm not really interested in anything off the top of my head right now. But I will say, I'm still unconvinced. I would really like to be able to vote for the capital plan. That's all I'm saying.
So what are you saying?
That's it.
I don't know what you're saying, because I think basically the consensus of the board.
Yeah, but we don't vote for each other. We vote
So when we
individually.
vote the capital plan, I count on your no.
That's a very good possibility, unless we can just, there's only a few items that have to move around.
No, I understand where you're at, but we asked for a legal opinion for a reason, and I think the consensus is we disagree, but the majority of the board agrees with the legal
Well,
opinion.
no, I accept that.
All right, so we're not trying to bring anything else back
No,
to
okay.
that. Okay, so any other changes charter-related that you're interested in right now?
Less is better.
Change is good.
Michael,
Sandra,
Linda would like to speak.
Linda,
Oh, after the board.
thought you were shushing me.
Oh, if I was shushing you, you wouldn't know it.
You know the direct part.
She would not hesitate.
Mary.
Um,
I know.
I would still like to pursue the town clerk being appointed rather than elected. I don't know whether that's on your list, but that's certainly on my list.
It's not at the moment.
No, not.
And we're up against needing to get our recommendations to you sooner rather than later.
Yep, okay.
But there's another
that's-
year we can have that conversation.
I'd like to have some discussion on that.
Julie.
So other than the zoning ones, which I know aren't falling to you, which we need to get on, the only other one I could say, which would be probably unpopular tonight, would I would like to add a clarification in the 965A to say that, you know, any amendment in the current year or any amendment to a previously adopted capital plan in the current year shall require a 2/3 vote at annual town meeting. That would make more sense to me,
We might actually have some agreement here.
because
So you're asking John Giorgio to craft some language change in that paragraph to present to the board for clarification.
yeah, that would be the one thing I would like to see.
But that would be 24, not 23.
I understand, yeah, I'm just,
Okay. No, I'm just
saying,
trying to
it's
clarify.
probably not a popular time to bring it up, but.
I sense peace
Bringing it up,
breaking out.
So, that'd be my only other, and the other zonings fall to us.
Good luck.
Joe, anything? Before I get to Linda?
Well, I want to go back to the E-code 360 statement, because I think the highlighted section in the handout, 5/8/2021, only related to the town meeting action. The voters just approved this this year, so all of these items are with the vendor, and that would have been something that the clerk does, and our clerk's been on top of it since the day she took office. So I don't know what that's a reference to. Any other content would have come from,
It wasn't a reference to anything. It's a reference to the fact that it has not made it into the code yet, and it's been a year and a half, for whatever reason. It's not in the current charter that's on the website, and it still shows up in E-code currently today as not having been codified. So whatever the reason, I'm just stating the fact.
well, I think I get to add myself to the list of groups that we disagree. On E-code 360 right now, there is a reference to a new law, so that is accessible immediately above the charter, and all of the items listed are with the vendor and have been with the vendor for several weeks.
We are not disagreeing, Joe. We're not disagreeing at all. I think
Well,
you're
so
looking
if I
for
may.
a problem where no problem exists.
Go ahead, let Joe talk,
Yeah,
please.
thank you. So there was a comment about the website and staff. So this is not an issue of the prior computer coordinator, as the title was then. This is not an issue related to our current IT director, nor do I think it's an issue related to our current town clerk. So whatever the reference is, it's not to existing staff.
Thank you.
Other than that,
It was not meant to be.
Hold on. Don, then Sandra.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think this would be fairly simple, but, because nobody, I don't know that everybody even on the board understands the full process. So after it goes to the second year, goes through the ballot, would it be fair to say that the Attorney General gets the document, and by July of that year, they typically either say, this is not consistent with law and I am turning it down, or it is consistent and you let it go forward?
That question is to John Giorgio.
That is to John, yeah. Just to make sure that everybody's working off the
You're
same.
talking now about a charter amendment, correct?
Yeah, that we've passed it at town meeting.
Yes.
The next year happened, we passed it at the ballot. It gets sent off to the Attorney General's office.
Not quite, Don. It gets passed at town meeting. It then goes to the Attorney General. The Attorney General has to approve it. Then it goes on the ballot at the next annual town election.
But my point is that that would not be what's going on here. There's no goaltending going on by the Attorney General, because it would be actionable sooner than that. I mean, they would have had to make the determination by
Yes, and I assume they approve this charter amendment.
That's what I'm driving at. Okay.
I don't know about shortly after town meeting, but certainly before the annual election where it was approved at the ballot.
Great, that's all I
And,
wanted.
you know, I know how passionately you feel about charter amendments
I read it
going
every
through
night.
that process, but there is an alternative, which is to do a charter change by a special act, and then it doesn't go to the Attorney General. Doesn't require the approval of the Attorney General, but
Since you brought that up, because I think everybody should probably know the essence of why I objected to that, because 350 other towns and cities get to opine on our charter, and they have, in the past, have instances going through the legislative process where wording has changed from what we originally requested. Us, we,
So-
any other we.
But
You can
now-
ask Bruce.
But now, Senate Council requires home rule petitions to have language that says no changes can be made except with the approval of the Board of Selectmen, and such changes have to be within the general intent of the vote at town meeting. So there is now, this didn't always exist, but there is now that protection that you all would have to approve any change to the wording as it was passed at town meeting.
You all set?
Is that, just one more thing, because I've been following what they've done with people who have gone on that track. Is there any guarantee that it even happens within the year that it's requested?
No.
Okay.
No, and that's a problem. It can, depending upon how effective your legislative team is, how controversial the charter change is, but there's no guarantee. I mean, I was reviewing a warrant today where there must be 4 or 5 home rule petitions, not necessarily charter change, that they have to vote again because it wasn't approved in the last legislative session.
Yeah, I just didn't want everybody thinking that that was the fast-track way and the other way
Not
is the slow way.
necessarily, no. The only difference is it requires a majority vote at town meeting, whereas a charter amendment is a 2/3 vote, so.
Thank you, John. All set, Don? Sandra, you were mid-sentence, so I'm gonna let you finish, and then I'm gonna go to Joe, then Linda.
I was asked the question, in my own defense, I was asked the question of where the responsibility is for getting it to E-code. I think I answered that. I don't think it was accusatory.
Okay. Joe?
I believe the original question is other changes.
Yes.
And my question would be simply to the charter or charter general or zoning bylaws.
Yeah, all of the above. Any changes? Because how many days until town meeting?
104.
104.
Well, technically, we're on 104.
So we're either gonna get on some of this, or we're gonna put it aside
I
until next
think
year.
it's highly doubtful that we would have any charter changes to come before this annual town meeting. Just for the sheer analysis that should go into that, general and zoning remain on track.
Thank you, Joe. Linda?
Well, just that Julie had the same idea I did, that getting section 965, get some wording in there so we don't go through this dance
Yeah.
5 years from now with a different group of people.
Right.
So I think you're absolutely right. And also, I'm sorry, Joe, if you took umbrage at comments about things not being on the website. It's somewhat irrelevant as to whether it was this IT person, that IT person, this person, that person. A factual piece is a lot of that stuff there is very outdated. And so if you're wanting townspeople to be able to have transparency in government, then these documents really do need to be there. I mean, not having election results since 2020, there's a lot of stuff that really seriously needs to be updated, so appreciate if whomever is responsible for it, they get on the wagon. And it's not a disparaging comment on anybody, but this stuff does have to be done.
The good news is, under this administration, we have new employees, and they are focused on it. So
Good.
we will get that taken care of. I share Mary's topic on wanting to at least have an in-depth discussion on voted versus appointed, elected versus appointed on the town clerk's position. Given that it's not really outlined in the charter, in the agenda tonight, I'm not gonna go into any depth on that, but it will be a standalone topic within the next couple weeks for the board to discuss and hopefully vote if it's something we want to try and do for this year, with input from the new clerk, I hope.
It's a discussion that's been going on for over 30 years.
So we talk about, while we have you here, and Sandra, I don't know how many combined years you have on the Charter Review Committee sitting here tonight, but we talk about the charter, and we talk about vague, and we talk about interpretation, and we talk about that a lot. And it's been 17 years since we've done any major changes to the charter, and it's been reviewed. Other than the vote of town meeting, what do you see happening with the charter as far as going through it and doing what we're supposed to do and do a thorough go-through? And should we, in your opinion, and I guess to the board, should we have an independent committee that reviews it and works alongside everybody involved, including charter bylaw review, to make some real revisions so things aren't as vague?
What the town requires is yet another committee. It depends on what your goal is, Michael.
The goal is to get rid of
How much do you feel needs changing?
In my 8 years, I've heard the word vague an awful lot. I've heard from you interpretation an awful lot. And though KP Law appreciates interpretation, I think we have a lot of cleanup to do.
Well, we are going through it. We have gone through 4 or 5 different committees this year, talking about various parts of it. The plan is to continue going through it. It's an ongoing process. If there are major changes that you are looking or particular things that you are concerned about, we would like to hear that.
And
We
Sandra,
haven't.
I think part of my point is I think we should get a fresh set of eyes on the charter and to get some recommendations outside of your recommendations.
Well, I guess that's entirely up to you.
Thank you. Julie, questions and comments on what I just introduced?
No, actually, I think previously when we talked about, when we had a meeting a couple months ago, I can't remember exactly the date, but that was kind of my point about saying, also looking at zoning, separating the zoning out and having that looked at. But also, I think that we were talking about, and forgive me, I can't remember if it was Finance Committee, we were having a discussion, either finance or capital at one point. And I think that sort of third party looking at all those is a good idea, because that third party can also say where things can be cleaned up, to your point, so they're not so vague. But I also think that they can provide sort of a route and a chart for why those things need to be cleaned up, or why things were changed in the past. Because John read a statement earlier tonight that trying to get the harmonious interpretation there, which makes sense to me, because I'll be honest, the fact that those words are missing from this now makes me think that they were mistakenly omitted, but I don't think that they were. And so we should understand why changes are being made and the impact that they will have moving forward. And that's, so, again, we're all in different feelings on what those words mean or if they should be incorporated. Understood. I'm just saying that while these changes are happening or being proposed, we should all understand the ramifications of those things. So a third party could or would be helpful.
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, go ahead, Sandra.
We were given to understand that the $75,000 for a consultant, the original premise was that the consultant would be there to advise this committee and help us do exactly what you're asking for. I don't know at this point what your plans are for the consultant, but that certainly would answer the problem of having a fresh set of eyes, a more updated set of eyes, and an objective view, without necessarily involving 5 or 10 more people. But again, up to you. I don't know what your plans are for the money, or what, who the consultant was anticipated to be advising. We were given to understand in the beginning, or at least we believed that this was going to be something that would be available to this committee to do the work that we're assigned to do.
My own opinion is by no means am I trying to say that you're not going to be part of it. I'm asking if it should be expanded outside of, and again, Sandra, you've been involved in this since the day it was written.
The day before.
I personally think we need some fresh sets of eyes to look at this rather than the combined experience on your committee.
Okay.
Not take you out of it, certainly have
Well,
your
you
input.
can.
So, And that's only my opinion, but this will be a topic we bring forward. Mary?
I agree. I thought the consultant, the 75K that Sandy just referenced, was exactly to do that, to assist you and be that set of eyes that maybe knew 6 other charters or whatever. In terms of what's in there, I never really know what's in there that I don't understand until we try to do it. But to Linda's point, you know, anything that's vague like that, is it 2/3? Is it full majority? I think that should be spelled out real clearly in there. So we don't, somebody said it, might have been Linda, so a different group of us doesn't debate this in 5 years. So I think that consultant is the first step.
It would be helpful.
Yeah.
John, did you have something?
Very quickly, Mr. Chair. You know, right now, I'm working with the town of Sandwich, with the Charter Review Committee, that are considering major changes to their form of government. And so when you get to that level, I think there are a lot of really good examples out there of charters that have stood the test of time in terms of interpretation and so forth. You know, here in Harwich, one of the things that I've been surprised at is there hasn't been more of a push to go to a stronger town manager form of government, given all the complexities that the town has, all of the projects. You might really want to take a look at something like that. That would, to Don's point, however, when you get to that level of charter change, you either need to elect a charter commission, or you can do it by a special act of the legislature, which is what Sandwich is doing. Not that that matters, but we've had a lot of experience guiding towns through charter revisions as opposed to piecemeal amendments. And so we would stand ready, willing, and able to assist the town or your consultants in making sure that the document is legally sound and meets your needs.
Thank you, Attorney Giorgio. Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of postscript things, because we haven't talked about them. The general court acted in 2008, but I was here. I was actually sitting in Michael's chair. Winnie Ovasca went about tearing apart the entire charter and redoing it. It did go to the general court.
Yep.
So it's not a panacea. I mean, if we're still complaining about what's going on here, they were complicit in what you're looking at, because it went there. It didn't go the normal route. When he had actually brought it, what she did do is she brought in everybody, which is probably what you're talking about is, all right, is this serving us well? Is this actually what we're doing and how we're doing it? Or does this need to be changed to conform to that? Or do we need to change what we're doing to conform to what's written? That kind of deep dive did happen. I mean, this isn't just in existence since 1989 or something. And I wanted everybody to hear that. But I'm with Mary. I mean, I would like to take the baby step first. Just have the contractor come in, talk with the charter committee. We, just so everybody remembers this, are elected, and we can put an article on town meeting floor amending the charter. It doesn't. They're not a goaltender. So if we disagree and we say, you know, we got to do something about section 17-4, we would sponsor the article. I mean, so it's not like it's being held up because an old committee doesn't want to move forward. We can do whatever we want to.
Old.
Well, kind of.
I think this chair might be the one Don sat in too, still.
No, actually, that's more back support than the one that I had.
That should be on the capital plan.
Yeah, it should be, so.
Too soon, Dad.
Next to Hope and Go. Larry, go ahead.
I see no reason to defend our charters or serve the town well. I do think it's, after all these years, it's time to have a third party look at it to see whether it flows right, whether it contains everything, and I'm very much supportive of that.
Linda?
Thank you, Larry.
Linda?
Joe?
Linda.
Joe, then Linda?
Linda, then Joe.
Linda, then Joe?
I yield.
You yield? Linda?
Darn good thing. Serious, I would think that a review of the charter is really two pieces. One is is it readable? And is it understandable? That's one piece. A second piece is, are there things that need to be changed or not? And I think that this consultant, the $75,000, if someone can come in and read through it and say, it seems to say this, well, that's not what it means. Well, then let's change the words. But I do think it's a two-piece review. One is it legible? Is it understandable? Does it say what we want it to say? The second piece is things like an elected or appointed town clerk, a town manager versus this versus that. It's really two, they're kind of parallel tracks, but one comes first, which is it understandable?
Thank you, Linda.
What can we do to make this better, and what kind of changes are you really looking for?
Joe, anything? Nope. Sandra, back to your table.
I'm done. You're done? Everybody's finished here?
The only thing I would like to say is to Deb and myself, we were on that revision that Winnie Ovaska, I've been on this committee for probably 20 years, I think, or better.
You started when you were 15?
No, I said, I have, not
No,
you.
no, not me.
She and I were on that revision with Winnie Ovaska, and what we did was we had every committee, everyone that had anything to do with the charter, we brought them in and had them look at their sections. What did you feel needed to be changed? What would you like to see changed? We went through meetings after meetings after meetings to try to get this thing, and it did go through special act, but this was 2008, 2009.
8.
Right, 2008. But I think by the time it got approved and went through, you know, so it has been done, Michael.
Excellent.
But, you know, new eyes, going through it again.
It's always a
and
good idea.
It's always a good idea.
Great.
And the consultant, I look forward to meeting whoever you have coming forward.
Great.
Change is good.
Change is
good.
good.
I would only disagree with Linda on the sequence. I would look at the what's needed first and worry about the grammar afterwards.
The grammar,
You don't want
though,
to check
but-
you don't
but
want to correct the
Larry,
grammar
the
and then change
grammar-
where you're going.
The grammar is what got us here tonight.
All right, what we're gonna do now is we're gonna close this part of our meeting, and we're gonna move on the agenda.
As much fun as it's been.
I will
Thank you all. Thank
adjourn
you.
our meeting.
Thank you.
Wow, that was exciting.
Whole bit? John, you're out, yeah. Thank you very much.
Thanks, John.
Attorney
See you
Georgie.
Friday.
Sorry to keep calling you John. Attorney Georgie.
Not a problem. Bye-bye, everyone.
See you Friday.
Thank you.
It's not an acronym, no, you can still use this now.
Old business, update on Judah Eldridge. Joe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we heard from council recently, the next step related to Judah Eldridge is now switching to the proposed order of taking. The requirement, according to Attorney Klein, is that a notice needs to be published twice in a paper of general circulation, with the second notice to be at least 14 days in advance of a Board of Selectmen hearing. So what I was hoping to do this evening, Mr. Chairman, is get some dates on the calendar relative to that. So we know that notifications have to be in the paper of circulation that we tend to use as the Chronicle. So we'd have to get a notice in before noon time on Monday for publication on the 26th of January. And my calendar's not playing with me here. And then, so theoretically, I think we would be looking at the board's hearing perhaps on Monday, February 13th. I know that the next week there is school vacation plus the holiday. So is it the will of the board to do the hearing sometime in February? And if so, I think the earliest we can achieve would be February 13th.
So the will of me is to get this done as fast as we can, so I'm fine with the February 13th date if that's the earliest.
I'm with you.
Larry?
Yeah, I'm with that too, this move.
Julie?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Mary's and I as well.
I heard that. I heard that.
So, Mr. Chairman, what I'll do is I'll work with staff, we'll confirm these dates with the Chronicle. If we can do it sooner, we'll certainly do it sooner.
There's a requirement on the land taking for Judah Eldridge to advertise and have a public hearing. So we're picking dates, and the first date will be the meeting that you're not at, February 13th.
Okay, yep, that's fine.
Elaine?
Yes, just to clarify, are you planning on using eminent domain? Is that how you're taking the land?
Yes, that's what was previously voted.
Okay, and you have gotten a survey, did you get another appraisal?
We have a survey, we have an appraisal. Do we need a second appraisal, Joe? I don't believe.
I think council is looking for information on the appraisal to make a recommendation. That's one of the blanks we have to fill in.
Because it's my understanding that whatever the current market value of appraisal amount, that's what would have to be put in escrow.
You made a note of that, Joe?
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. It would be great to go to town meeting and have this one done.
So the pertinent information we were looking for to get those questions answered is the hearing for the board, so that we know what we're shooting for notice.
Okay, thank you, Joe. And just for the public that doesn't know Judah Eldridge, this is a piece of property on Seth Whitefield Road that I think it was 5 years ago we started the eminent domain taking, back taxes and CPC funds to purchase. So we're trying to close out an old one. Debrief from joint meeting with Harwich Affordable Housing Trust on December 12th. Joe, I formulated some questions after that meeting, bounced them off the vice chair for any additions, and I sent them to you and you gave me answers. Do you want to go through those questions and answers?
I don't have a copy for myself, but I can go off of my email that.
Yeah, if you don't mind, and if you want, I can start it. 2 members of the trust expressed an interest in changing the trust documents. I wrote, I am leaving this in the trust hands unless Selectman Ballantyne's brings forward a request to agenda. Larry, you were in favor of some changes, but the way I put it to Joe was it needs to start with a vote of the trust before a vote of the board.
I'm fine.
The next one was based on the AMI, Joe, and then did we get an answer in writing to what the AMI is, 40 to 60% or 40 to 80%? You have a long answer on that one. I know that the conversation for the most part that day was related to workforce housing and the Marsline property and what the trust can do. Will you just give us an update on where we are with the AMI? And I know it's more, from my conversations with you, a lot more difficult than just demanding somebody put something in writing. So.
Right, thank you. So generally speaking, and I would agree with everything you've said thus far, Mr. Chairman, as to where this came about. The trust is bound by the definitions of low and moderate income housing as defined by DHCD. They still generally think about it in terms of low is up to or less than 60% area median income, and moderate is up to less than 80% AMI. However, as we get into discussions on certain projects on certain lands, then they have a 10-page matrix that talks about whatever the anticipated use of the property would be, or what the anticipated development would be, or what the anticipated project would be, and then related funding sources. It has a specific AMI. So an example would be, I think back in the late summer of '22, we heard from 2 individuals that are generally developers, and they were talking about LIHTC, which is low-income housing tax credits. So specifically, according to DHCD, if there is a project wherein the developers are relying upon LIHTC, then they are held to less than 60% AMI. And as you've said, Mr. Chairman, for me, it really has always been about the phrase workforce housing and how that, from my perspective, is a confusing topic that doesn't really relate to the trust. I will continue to say, however, it still relates to the town and any other agencies, boards, committees, or people.
Thank you, Joe. We'll get on to questions from the board unless they want to do them one by one. It's not a very long document at the end. Legal question, chair or designee. Can you as the town administrator and chair designate someone and they will be chair, or would the vice chair be chair in that circumstance?
My understanding is you have a legal opinion from council that indicates that that question is more of a policy discussion rather than a legal opinion. And policy, from my perspective, given that it relates to my role, I would devolve to you folks as the board.
And would that be a policy of the Board of Selectmen or policy of the trustees of the trust?
If you give me a moment, I might be able to find council's opinion on that.
And I will, for the board, there's attachments with opinions. I will have this in next week's packet for the public as well.
So this is an opinion that was, council rendered back in 2021. So I put that out there because I don't believe there's a stale datedness, but I defer to the board. The question of who should serve as chair of the Affordable Housing Trust is a policy decision rather than a legal issue. While the board may have been comfortable with the idea of the town administrator serving as a permanent chair, when the declaration of trust was initially approved, there is nothing in state law that prohibits an amendment of the trust for such a purpose.
Thank you. Now that we have those two on the table, why don't we start with the last, since it's a legal opinion. Larry, any questions on that? No. Don?
Personally, I think it's a moot point at this point, because I'd rather, the first thing I said today at the meeting, we had a really good site visit, by the way, that I wish you guys could have seen. We're at the 80%. I think we all agree. I mean, because that was the only point of contention. I think really what my takeaway from that meeting was there's a common understanding that we just have to start moving. I mean, both the Board of Selectmen and the Housing Trust have to start moving. I'm not interested in blaming anybody, and I'm not looking at changing that document for that reason. Actually, I've had more other reasons, because there are obscure references where they continue to use the word board interchangeably with the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Trustees, and it's very vague about which board they're talking about. But it's durable enough to continue working forward under the constraints that Joe just outlined. It really has to do with the funding source and what you were obligated to do given that funding source. We're at the point where we're going to be able to do some stuff, and I would hate to start going back and relitigating stuff. Personally, I don't care whether it changes.
Okay. Mary, related to the legal opinion on whether or not we can make a policy. Any questions on that based on what Joe read? Julie?
No, I don't have any questions.
Okay. Now back to the AMI. The only thing I would say on the AMI is there's been accusations about Joe representing 30% of the AMI. 30% is a brand-new number to me. I've never heard that number before. It's always been about workforce housing in the conversations or what the trust is able to do. And I know that, Don, I appreciate you saying that I don't want to go back and blame anyone. I think today's meeting a little bit speaks for itself, which we can't get into in depth tonight. But 80% AMI, and all the projects I've looked at, I have not seen 80% AMI. So though we don't want to under-project, but developers, not seeing a lot of people diving at 80% AMI with the funding that they would need to make this project. So that's my only, I don't want to now steer the public in the direction that we can use 80% AMI. I would be a lot more comfortable with 40 to 80. Go ahead.
And you're absolutely right. And just for the record, 80 is a cap, and it really boils down to something that we haven't even discussed. The money came largely from the CPC to buy that property, the Marsline property. We can't exceed 80% because the law says that that's what they're constrained to funding. We could do mixtures, and I've been in contact directly with Alan McLennan and a bunch of other people. How did you do what you did? It's workable. It doesn't have to be all 80% because you're right. You won't be able to get subsidies to be able to pull that off. But it could be a mix. Mixed-use housing is pretty much what everybody's doing at the moment. And I totally agree that 80's that cap because the funding source can't be exceeded. It can't get it beyond 80%.
Larry, anything you want to add to the AMI discussion? No. Mary?
Nope.
Julie?
No.
Joe, I hope you have your email up.
Yep.
Discussion. Housing Trust membership makeup. Under new business item H, no action was taken. So the makeup, I know that Judith had asked the question. What was the question related? It was related, Joe, to the makeup of the trust and whether or not the board could change the makeup of the trust. That's what it was. So can we remove trust members if we want, I believe was the context of the question.
So the short answer is yes, because when you reviewed the trust document in December, and I apologize, I'm going from memory, I thought I had a copy of the trust document, but actually, wait, I do. If you give me a moment, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to validate what I'm thinking is that when you had the discussion, the trust document makes reference to Article 5. Article 5 is, again, this is of the declaration of trust for the trust itself. Article 5, removal of trustees. A member of the board may be removed from the trust by the Board of Selectmen by a majority vote after a public meeting or by failure to reappoint.
Okay. Questions? Start with Larry.
None.
Don?
I said what I said. I really would like to go forward here and start to do stuff.
I appreciate that. I'm trying to give the public and the rest of the trust the answers to the questions that were asked, because I don't want to
The only addendum I can make,
accused
and
of-
I'm not arguing the point because it says what it says, is that most of the other trust documents from Southeast Massachusetts down talk about removal for cause in a posted hearing, and that's not what this says. It just said a simple majority of the Board of Selectmen can remove somebody.
Okay. Mary?
No questions.
Julie?
I'm just looking back at my notes from that discussion, and just because we've had the bylaw charter review committee here tonight, one thing we did talk about, not to get off topic, Mr. Chair, but we talked about the fact that we didn't have any committee language of the trust in bylaw charter, so we should think about that.
But it's under Mass General Law.
No, but so I just have that we had the makeup of the trust, and we talked about the one seat for the BOS is required, right? We talked about 2-year membership. Then we talked about whether or not we should be incorporating some language in the charter. I'm just mentioning that because we had that discussion. But we also talked about, rotating the chair and then the election of, by trustees. So I don't have any questions about it, but I guess I'm just trying to say that I think it's important to rotate the chair. I also, I think that we need to look, and I understand from the previous conversation we talked about not making certain changes because of consistency, but back to Don's point of we all know we need to move forward. We need to move forward. We need to move forward ASAP, and how do we do that? That's really where I'm stuck.
Thank you. Larry, you're all set?
I'm set.
Don, you set on
Yeah.
that one? Okay. Selectman Howell mentioned the board throughout the document and not specific to Board of Selectmen or Board of Trustees. Answer, there are 39 references to the word board contained within the trust declaration. Board of Selectmen 15 times, Board of Trustees 8 times, and 16 times in separate from the words of selectmen or trustees. The singular use of the word board as a standalone reference occur as follows throughout the declaration. Article 3, 3 references. Article 4, 12 references, and Article 5, 1 reference. Therefore, the total uses of the word board appearing in the Declaration of Trust breakout as follows: 15 Board of Selectmen, 8 Board of Trustees, and 16 Board without any immediate reference to any other title. So is your wish, Don, to try and clarify the 16?
Yeah, my prior life, I wrote contracts. So all I'm trying to do is make sure that there's a secure tether to what it is you mean by the word. Normally, it says the Board of Selectmen hereinafter known as the, and then the Board of Trustees hereinafter referred to as the, so that you don't have that confusion. Is it a deal killer? No. Is it going to stop anybody from getting a roof over their head? No. But ultimately, as we just talked tonight, we start going 4, 5, 6, 7 years down the road, and it becomes obscure. What did you really mean when you did that? It's not a deal killer.
Joe, anything on that one?
No.
You want to add? All set?
Nope.
Mary?
No.
Julie?
No.
Larry?
Upset.
And that ultimately, I think, would be a trust conversation if they come back with wanting to change the documents.
You do want us to have that conversation? I just want to clarify.
I don't want you to do anything. I want you guys to decide if
Okay.
you want to do anything.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Brendan Lowney from the Affordable Housing Trust. Just real quickly, to this point here, whenever the board is used by itself in Article 3, it says there shall be a board of trustees, and it defines it as the board. So I believe if you read that, whenever it's used by itself, it's referring to the board. So maybe we just clarify that language and make sure it coincides with that.
Thank you, Brent.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Resident suggestion to remove DHCD language related to AMI from the trust documents. I put this should be by the recommendation of trust. Thoughts? This is a long answer. And this is Joe's answer. To me, the purpose of the trust is
Chairman?
clear. Go ahead.
Would it help if I did this again in real time
Go ahead.
on that one?
Yep.
This trust document is going to celebrate its 5th birthday this summer, meaning it's been around for that long. It's been around longer than I have in my role here and any of my roles here in the town. The purpose of the trust, as I understand it, is clear, unambiguous, and simple. And it is for the preservation and creation of low and moderate income housing as determined by DHCD. So we know very clearly what that means. And we can articulate every spring the actual dollar amounts that means for salaries, income, rents, and everything else. So we can articulate that mission and that purpose and personalize it. And I've never been involved in the conversation, and I say that just as a fact, it's not a criticism. There was never a purpose or an opportunity really for me to have it. But now that we're having it, this gets to me to the very core of government, and especially municipal government. So we, the town of Harwich, and I say we in this case because I've been a resident, will be 8 years this summer. We, the town of Harwich, made the choice to develop a board of trustees of an affordable housing trust fund for the purpose as I've just stated. That is a noble, laudable, lofty, and needed goal, because it's municipal government reaching out to those folks with limited means in an area that is a wash in wealth and in property, but not access. And so if we're going as a town to have a conversation as to whether we should change the purpose of the trust, I will try to fight as vigorously as I can to retain it. That's why I started to bring into the conversation the phrase, not the purpose, but the phrase workforce housing, because that is nebulous, it is untethered, it is undefined by the statutes, it is something separate and distinct. The one thing that the trust can do is the preservation and creation of low and moderate income housing. Everybody else outside of the trust can do any kind of housing. We can do wealthy housing. We can do workforce housing for executives. We can do workforce housing for folks that are greater than 80%. There's no restriction on the greater ability of that. But we as a town committed ourselves at least 5 years ago for the purpose of creating and preserving for a segment of society, our society, that unfortunately is growing because of the wealth that we enjoy. We all know why property is so expensive on Cape Cod. It is a phenomenal place to live, to grow, and to raise a family. So if we're gonna have a conversation about the purpose of the trust, and anyone is asking me, as I think you have, no, I don't think we should do anything to change that purpose of the trust. And we've talked about moving forward on that. So everybody else can talk about workforce housing, and should, and whatever that means to them. But we purposefully, as a town, created this trust fund for that purpose, and we ought to keep to it.
So Joe, with that said, I had put in my notes on that I thought that began with the trust as well, a conversation with the trust on whether or not they want to do it, and then bring it back to the board. Does the board disagree with me? Julie?
No, and I appreciate everything you just said, Joe, and you're right, that's how we created it, but although workforce isn't defined, it remains a big problem in housing. So, I leave it to the trust to make that decision, but I would be open to that.
Okay. Mary?
I think there's enough issues of housing that we can leave the trust as is and deal with the affordable end of it. As Joe said, there's plenty of other, our housing advocate, our housing committee, we as selectmen. I just would like to not muddy it up at the moment.
Thank you. Larry?
I'm on the side of trying to figure some way to help our workforce. I've been around too many people that specifically I'm associated with Outer Cape Health, as some of you know. Finding nurses and housing in our area is becoming impossible. You look at teachers, and so I'm hoping that within your framework of where you're seeing life, Joe, that when we define moderate income, that maybe the 80% is attractive to that workforce group. Because for me, that's the top priority, quite frankly. We need, we're hiring fire, police, all these people. There's no place to live right now. So I'm hoping there's some flexibility in Joe, your definition, to make that work.
Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I sit on the trust, that I've been listening all through these many years about different things. I don't even know how I feel. Actually, I'm not as far along as Larry and Julie are, probably closer to what Mary is, but the only cautionary tale I give, well, two things. First of all, there's no way to have a discussion unless you're doing it at a public meeting. There was never a vote from the trust that actually said, here's what we voted and this is what we want you to do. It was a point of discussion, as I recall, but I mean, Brenda, was there ever a vote that you recall that we said we wanted to torch the DHCD reference?
The DHCD reference didn't come from you, it came from Richard Waystack.
Oh, okay.
It's from a resident.
That's what I'm saying. I thought I had amnesia. I don't remember doing that. But the only thing that I'm grappling with, and this is to you, Mary, the only thing I'm grappling with is when the money goes into the trust, it can't come out from the trust except for the purpose that the trust was formed. So should we go in the direction you're talking about, there's two things a trust does. It hangs on the money, and it can pull the trigger on something in between town meetings like that. That's why it was created, so we wouldn't keep waiting cycles. We are not going to be in a position to fund anything above 80% as it currently stands, and I agree with Joe. That's what the matrix is. So money and assets that we have on hand, even if we were to liquidate them, would not be able to be dispersed except for the purpose of the trust. And I'm concerned that might handcuff us, but I'm not convinced it will. So, I mean, personally, I feel that before you can run, you need to walk, and before you need to walk, you need to crawl. We need to prove to the public that we can do something positive. And that will actually trigger, I believe, some public impetus to do even more stuff. But we just need a success. We need to do something. And to Julie's point originally, it needs to happen like now. And that's where I'm at right now. I don't really, if this is going to stall anything, I don't care about changing anything at the moment, because it could always be changed later on. It's a declaration that's filed with the Registry of Deeds. But I don't see that it's preventing us from moving.
Brendan?
Just real quickly to add to the AMI conversation. So when HUD puts out the AMI every April, I think this year it's going to be bumped a month into May. They give you the percentages of 30, 50, 60, 80%. They break it down for you. So when we're talking about that, we want to hit 80% because to get on the shy list, we have to be 80% or less. And that's dictated by DHCD, right? So they control that and everything else. So that's always the number we're working with. But something to think about, which we never really dive into the numbers. So 80% AMI for one person, $60,900 a year. When you get to the family of four, it goes a little bit higher, but that's where it's always the problem. The family of four, married couple, 2 kids, they always exceed that number. But even under this, we could help people that are making $60,000 or less. So I think that's, when you talk about workforce housing, really should just forget about that term altogether. It's 80% or less. And then when you think about all of the programs, the reason why you hear 30, 50, 80, all these different numbers, the developers will come to the table. When we do an RFP for 80% or less, they're going to come to the table and they're going to find a program that fits their needs. Whether it's a LIHTC or a LIP, there's percentages. So for example, 60% might be a LIHTC, and you can't go any higher. You can't go to 80% up, but you could do 60%. And that's where a developer is going to find the money and do their numbers and figure out their cap rate and see whatever works for them. So I think don't get hung up on the numbers. We don't have to tell someone, well, we want 60%, the exact number. It's 80% or less, and that's how the numbers fall. Like CPC gives us money, we could be at 100%, but we can't because it doesn't hit the inventory list. So it has to be 80% or less. I went through all the documentation. The only number I find is 80% or less. It's not broken down in any capacity. HUD does it, and DHCD gets the information from HUD. So there's a lot there, but if you go through it and spend 30 hours, you'll get the answer I have, just so you know.
Thank you.
But it's, like I said, don't get hung up on the numbers. Workforce housing, I mean, you can argue that workforce housing, I would just forget about the terms, forget about the percentages. We're all about low, to Joe's point, low to moderate as defined at the time of the RFP. And things change, and so does the HUD. Every year, those numbers will come out AMI, and they change. And that's every April. Okay.
Thank you, Brendan. Joe, next one was related to whether or not the trust can do their own procurement. Do you have that up, or?
I do. The short answer is, I think it's a policy decision, but that's being generous. The charter indicates that the town administrator is the chief procurement officer for the town. The only exceptions to that are the water, wastewater commissioners, an elected body, and the Board of Library Trustees, an elected body. There's no other group that is exempt from that, and that would include the trust. Having said that, those other departments still rely upon my responsibility and abilities as the chief procurement officer.
Thank you. Julie, any questions on that?
No.
Mary?
Nope.
Don?
Yeah, he didn't mention, but it's true, that elsewhere in the legislation, it does require, irrespective of who actually does it, it absolutely requires that it be done in accordance with municipal contracting.
Okay, Larry?
No addition to Joe's comments, we leave it there.
Thank you. Update needed on the Sisson Road housing in its entirety, including lease. Who controls? Was it the right action and tenant's performance of the lease? I definitely didn't spell check that one. But bottom line is, we want to get an update, and I'm going to have a topic on in the very near future on Sisson Road related to the lease on that property. But you did supply an attachment, Joe.
So again, we're talking 265 Sisson Road, the Junior Theater, or the present name of that,
Yep.
and the old rec building. When the town was going through the exercise of registering deeds in the name of the trust, that was one of the properties that was conveyed at town meeting under the article in 2019. Katie Klein is the attorney that worked on that, and generally speaking has said that the conveyance vote, everything at that parcel was transferred to the care, custody, and control of the trust. With regard to the lease that presently exists, Attorney Klein wrote, the trust would assume the lease i.e. become the landlord under the lease if the entirety of the property were conveyed to the trust. And she confirmed that the entirety of the property was conveyed to the trust.
So that's an action that was a mistake because the trust can't lease town property? Or,
It's not town property to be leased, it's trust property to be leased.
and the trust?
So the town still enjoys the fruits of the use of that building, meaning the town, through the Board of Selectmen, we still get revenue directly to the town general fund. So there's been no change to the lease agreement or the lease relationship. But to your statement, Mr. Chairman, it is a fact of law to say that the property is owned by the trust.
Thank you. Larry?
Owned by the Housing Trust, is what you're saying.
Correct, as conveyed by town meeting in 2019.
That's it for me.
Don?
Yeah, I don't know that this is much of a, it's a distinction without a difference. The trust has the ability to acquire by purchase, gift, or other means, property and other, both real and personal. And it also has the ability to flip within that document, just to colloquially talk about it. I'm not sure it makes a whole heck of a lot of difference if that thing is sitting there generating income. I think the discussion probably is that maybe it's generating income for the trust and not for the general government. But eventually the lease is going to expire. I'm not, what we had in play with MHP, and they got as far as doing some conceptuals, was 2 quads on the property with a separate septic system with the building still existing, and it wouldn't preclude us from later on, at least out, talking about what we want to do with the building. But I think it probably is correct to say that that money can't go to the town if it's an asset of the trust. It has to go to the trust.
Okay. Julie?
So just a question on that. So meaning the building would stay where it is, the quads would be separate?
Yeah.
You do a separate septic, or would you join them?
Yeah, there was an architectural layout for it with 2 quads on the south side of the parking lot. They would have a shared parking lot, but not a shared septic system, and that could go forward without any kind of real problems, except for the fact it's really difficult at that size magnitude to get a developer to be even interested in it unless we A, wrapped it into some other bigger development, or B, decided that maybe we needed to do a buy down by contributing the land in exchange for the developer building that out the way we want to. But there's no argument about this. I mean, I know it went over to the trust and we just haven't done anything about it. It's just an open item.
And there's no impact to the lease? There's no, if we were to
If we were to
move
do
forward.
that, there's no impact at all. I've already contacted the Cape Cod Theater Company, 2 sets of boards, and we were hoping to get them to support our initiative to actually get something off the ground in the other part of that parcel in exchange for, like, not abrogating their lease immediately and having some joint support at a town meeting and say, here, this is what we're planning on doing. We might need a little extra money to do it too. That wasn't voted either. We haven't done anything permanent. What I'm hoping that is sometime we will, because it's all about building coalitions. I mean, if you can do that and get 2 different sets of people who have different agendas to say, we really need to do this, that, I think that'll break up a logjam that's existed on that property for a while. It is no one's fault that it's a logjam. It's just been sitting there, and it had prolonged discussion, then COVID hit, and then Laura Schufeld couldn't find the original, because that thing was put out for contract in the early 2000s with the 2 quads in it. It just never happened.
What's the lease end date?
So I'm going to agenda a topic for board discussion on that building and that lease and the performance of the lease. It makes absolutely no sense to me whatsoever with having the 204 Sisson Road and the cultural activities in there, why the junior theater wouldn't want to move into a building with an auditorium and what we have, and then develop that property for affordable housing. It's only my opinion, and I know it's been quoted that we're ready for the fight, but I'd like to look at the performance of the lease and what conditions were there on the lease, the transfer of the lease when we transferred the property, and really come up with an educated decision as a board and then move forward. So,
I would only ask you that you include trust in that because this Board of Selectmen can't abrogate that lease
we can,
by itself.
we never transferred, I would argue that we never transferred the lease, we transferred the property. But Joe said,
It's a
that we
land use
transfer.
document.
so I will agenda that for us, and if the trust wants to be involved, great. Brendan?
Just in that legal note, so the trust does assume the lease moving forward, but there was a note at the very bottom, and it states, "I'm thinking that it may not make sense for the trust to be a landlord in these circumstances. Ownership and management of a theater are not the purpose for which the trust is established. I assume the rent is intended to go to the town and not the trust. It might be preferable for the town to retain custody of the theater lot and to convey custody of the remainder of the property to the trust. If that is the town's intent, please advise, and I will determine how to meet that objective."
Thank you.
So there's a, is it something we should be doing, not be doing? I think it was out there, but as far as the real estate, it all moves to us. We assume everything. Is that something we want to be doing?
Thank you, Brendan. Joe, I'll be putting that on as a topic in the near future. You can share that as an agenda item and a topic for the trust. That's really it. I'm gonna share this document with the Board of Selectmen so they have it. Now that we've spoken about it, I will share it with the public in next week's correspondence, and I will, the town administrator should share this with the trust members at some point when he can put it on your agenda. Anything further on this?
There is a meeting on Monday of the trust, so it's possible.
Okay. Anything further? I'm gonna hold anything not related to December 12th
Okay.
to Selectmen's report,
Okay,
and then look for an agenda item
all right.
for the following week or whenever we decide. But because this is specific to December 12th, I think we
Okay.
should keep it to that.
Thank you.
Contracts, motions.
It's the motion to accept the grant, then?
Vote to authorize the
Want me
chair to
read it,
execute.
Don?
No, I've got it here. I just want to make sure about what we're actually directing this to. I move that we accept the 2023 Student Awareness of Fire Education and Senior Safe Grant applications
Vote to authorize the chair.
to receive the award amounts of $3,781 for SAFE, which is the Student Awareness Fire Education Grant, and $2,077 for the Senior SAFE Grant.
And authorize the chair.
And
to
authorize the chair to sign.
Second.
sign. Moved in second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0.
Now,
Go.
yeah, this.
I have it in front of me, I can.
Yeah, why don't you, because,
I move, we approve a change of order request from Baldage evacuating an amount of $6,000 for the Cranberry Valley Golf Course bunker renovation project.
the board to sign?
Yeah, just excavating,
Excavating.
yeah.
Go ahead, Don.
Why wouldn't Joe sign this? I mean, it's $6,000.
It was a change order to a larger contract that is seized by
Oh,
the
okay.
authority.
Okay, so the motion was to approve it and
Yep.
for the board to sign that?
Yeah,
Yep, who's
Okay.
the second?
I was.
Moved in second, and all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Town administrators report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Two items. The first, I am pleased to report that I have promoted Susan Kerr, who was an executive assistant in the Treasurer Collector's Office, to the position of Assistant Treasurer Collector. As you know, Sue has worked for us for a number of years. It is a great opportunity for a well-qualified employee to progress upwards. Having said that, still within the same association, but certainly a great move for Sue, and I'm thrilled that she put herself out there for the promotion. And then secondly, I believe 4 of you will be joining me in our capital city on Friday and hopefully Saturday to some point, because then it gets really bogged down, for the 44th annual business meeting and trade show of the Mass Municipal Association. I was telling some of the members that, yes, I'm very excited about this week because I'm a government geek, and this is where all the government geeks go, and there's a trade show. So I'm very excited about that, and I look forward to joining most of you there this week. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Selectmen's report, we will go to Larry,
Nothing to add to that.
then we'll do Don.
It's important to bring an extra bag, Joe.
Well, they're reducing the takeaways.
What?
Yeah.
Well, maybe we don't go.
I'm not.
What kind
In
of
case anyone was wondering who the fifth was.
what kind of takeaways we got?
Oh, goodies. There's a goodie bag.
So Don, you're all set.
I'm good.
Julie,
I have nothing to report.
Mary,
It has become painfully apparent to me that the Affordable Trust has been and continues to be increasingly dysfunctional. At this point, the only way I see to fix it and to move forward with housing, as Don just described, to actually do something with housing, is to change out some of the players, get some fresh minds into the conversation. 2 members' terms end in June, and what I would like to suggest is that we thank them for their service now and bring 2 new players in now, or we're gonna continue to be dysfunctional.
thank you, Mary, and I will take that as a formal agenda item
Okay.
for next week, where you and I will talk about for the week after.
Okay?
But for an action of the board, and we're not gonna debate this tonight. I did receive a fair amount of calls today, and it was an embarrassment to the town, to say the least, and I couldn't agree with Mary more. It's time to make a change, and it's time to move forward. And now, before we get into a big project, is the time. So we will agenda that
Okay.
for next week or the week after. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded to adjourn, all in favor?